Hello and welcome to the Long Dark Nights podcast. I'm Kirk.
And I'm Jitwire. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. And may we also welcome our guest today, Toastybits. Welcome, Toasty. Did we lose Toasty?
Already? Did we lose Toasty?
I think we did.
Yeah,
So,
hang on, let me fix it.
Yeah, I'll say hi to chat. Hi, Piccolo, and Elijah. Hello, Nexus, Bacon, Daniel. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I did see that Elijah Zach's premiere is on. I think Stars is also streaming as well too. So
yeah, lots of competition today, but that's okay. Still supporting the community.
Yeah.
Houston, this is Toasty. Come back.
Yeah, might have to Discord him.
Well, as we're waiting for Toasty to find his way back to us, because he's lost in traffic, according to his hosts here.
Yes.
We're going to be covering the final chapter of the storyline as we have it presented to us. We still have one more waiting as soon as Hinterland decides to share it with us. But we'll be going over the final chapter here. Okay, here he is. Hang on, let's get him back on. Welcome back, sorry. Toasty.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No worries.
I muted myself earlier, and it just showed me like in an empty Streamlabs channel or something like that. I don't know.
Oh no.
Anyway,
that's okay.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah,
for our final installment.
Yeah, I beat the traffic, so I'm here.
Yeah. Well, no podcast would be complete without some Streamlabs shenanigans. So
absolutely. I would feel completely inadequate if I didn't have a problem to fix.
Yep. And Nexus, that's great. Great that you made it and you didn't forget because you were playing, but playing is also really fun. So I totally get it.
This is why we rebroadcast all these later. So
yeah,
watch it now or watch it later.
Yes, yes. And also want to take a quick moment to say if you are watching the recording of this, we really appreciate you as well. So don't feel bad if you can't make it live.
And leave comments. Ask questions.
Yeah. For sure. But I guess we should probably get started because quite a bit to cover. So Toasty, where do you think we're starting today? Just at the beginning?
Sorry. I was just trying to clear my throat there.
No worries.
Yeah, let's start. So we can recap very quickly what happens at the end of episode 2 because that is relevant to episode 4. So at the very end of episode 2, Will's in Carter Dam. He's trying to make his way through. And at the very end, he's about to exit. Well, I guess the door's jammed, but like Will didn't know that. But he runs into another concussive blow to the head. And he wakes up later and notices that he has been tied up and is now greeted by an unsavory fellow. We would later learn that his name is Mathis, and he is one of the escaped convicts from the Milton bus crash. And so the prisoner, Mathis, questions him, asks him like what's in the hard case. He doesn't find his answer too convincing because Will doesn't know what's in it. He just has it. He knows it's important. Starts beating him up, asks him if he has a plane because he sees on his license that he's a pilot, and ends up knocking him out. I'm not sure if the intention was to kill him then and there, but it didn't end up like that. So he didn't get killed there. And then before he does that, before he knocks him out, Mathis does say something that kind of concerns Will, that he had run into a woman earlier in the dam and alluded to killing her. And so that comes up a little bit later. So then we enter the prologue of episode 4. And this is kind of happening simultaneously with Astrid leaving Pleasant Valley and making her way down the highway towards Perseverance Mills. So, yeah, some of this, the different perspectives for the protagonists, all of their journeys kind of coincide together, certain parts of them. And then we enter prologue. Will is being carried to Blackrock Penitentiary, and the prisoners that are carrying him are acquaintances of Mathis. They are named Heller and Bakan, and they're all like in a crew together. You'll learn a little bit more about them later, about their crew. They're talking, they're talking maybe a little too much because they assume he's unconscious, but he's waking up and listening and learning about their plans, what they want to do with Will, who Donner is, and why they want to break him out. And then also that they are being chased by something other than wolves. There's someone else out there chasing after them, a bow-wielding hunter. So if you watched the episode 3 podcast, or if you played episode 3, you'll know who that might be. And then they notice he's awake. Mathis talks to him, confirms that he did end up killing that woman in the dam, but it was an older woman and unknown to him, most likely. His biggest concern was that it was Astrid, but it wasn't, fortunately. And I think a lot of people confuse that for Grey Mother, but that can't be. It's impossible, because how would she get there? Oh no, my phone. I need to put that on silent. I'm sorry.
No worries.
No problem.
I don't know if you can hear that.
I don't think we could, but yeah, life happens.
Good. Yeah, and after that, after Mathis introduces himself again to Will, they continue forward, and then are eventually attacked by the wolves that have been chasing after them, and that frees Will temporarily, allows him to escape and make his way down it's like the ravine passageway that we take on the way to Blackrock from Pleasant Valley. It's Keeper's Pass North, and then he would arrive at the cabin that you see later, breaks his hands free of the bindings, and then climbs up the rock climbs there, and unfortunately gets almost said run over. Basically, he gets run over by Mathis with the hard case, and gets another hit to the head. I think we need to have 27. A counter. Yeah, we need to have a. We were talking about
concussion counter.
We need a concussion counter for Will, because it's quite a few. He does have a thick skull by the looks of it. And so that's the end of prologue, and then we go into Blackrock Blues, which is the first full chapter, where Will wakes up, finds himself in a prison cell next to the former warden, Franklin. Excuse me, I still have a bit of a cough from my sickness. Sorry, everyone. Franklin greets himself and then tells him the situation, like the prisoners took over a few days ago. The power went out a few weeks ago. The backup generator failed at some point. And nothing in the prison seems to be working right, because, the power's out and they're in lockdown. So certain, things are happening in the prison that aren't supposed to be happening, because nothing really is working right. There's no idea what's going on. And he even shares like what he knows about Mathis, because he has some history with him. Franklin was warden at another prison where Mathis was held originally, and explains a bit of his history, his crimes, etc., and why Donner, his son, Mathis's son, is in Blackrock, and why Mathis might also be there at Blackrock at that moment to try to break him out. And then one important thing he tells him before Mathis arrives is that they both are still alive for a reason. Otherwise, they would be dead. So Franklin's reason for being alive is because he knows the prison. He should know it, and that's why they want him alive. So will be, I think he learns it previously or overhears it that they want to use him as a pilot to get off the island. So that's why Mathis asked him about a plane, but he doesn't have a functioning plane, nor would it work anyways. Then Mathis arrives and starts questioning Franklin. Asks him why is what's it called, solitary? Yeah. Why is solitary in lockdown? And Franklin swears to him that he doesn't know. It's in lockdown, and it shouldn't be in lockdown because it was never triggered. And starts beating him because he doesn't like the answer. He doesn't like that. Basically, the way I see it, any answer that Mathis doesn't like, it's like someone is telling him no. Like he can't accept that someone else's failures is impeding on him, on his goals. So it's like someone is telling him no. And so his response is usually to beat them or yell at them. Mathis only knows violence, from what we can tell. Beats the former warden, so badly that he needs proper medical attention. And that's when Mathis leaves and has the other two prisoners, Heller and Vakan, give him medical attention. But they didn't do such a good job. While they were doing that, they talk about the past. They kind of reminisce on a heist that they all were a part of. I guess Vakan was not part of the heist, but they were all part of the same crew that would conduct, various different types of crimes. And they talk about one heist that they did in Montreal, and it was going okay until it didn't. And that's when they saw like Mathis's true nature and how when everything goes wrong, he goes berserk.
That was
he goes unhinged.
His getaway driver was late.
Yeah.
And they could have gotten away, but he freaked out on them, right?
Yeah, they're talking about how they haven't seen Mathis at true crazy. And he ends up going to prison because he pulled the driver out and beat him senseless and told the rest to leave. He would prefer to go to jail so that he can give the driver the punishment they deserved for making them late. And that kind of wraps up the reminiscing part, but that's when they realize the warden needs proper medical attention and better medicine. And so Will offers to go get it, and they hesitate a little bit and decide that Will can do it if they can sneak him out, but he needs to return. Otherwise the warden would die. So there's they're trying to trust him and give him, the benefit of the doubt. But obviously there's something else that Will needs. He needs the hard case, so he can't leave, even if he wanted to. After that, you're free to explore the prison, do whatever you want. I usually take 15 to 20 hours exploring everything before I do the story. So it depends on how much time you waste exploring. But you can go straight to the infirmary, which is what you're supposed to, and find that the medicine that the warden would need is not there. There was an event that happened before the quiet apocalypse that required medical services outside the prison wall. And so that's what Will would end up doing. But before that, he gets a phone call. So this, if you recall, this was a thing in episode 3, and Will did run into a ringing phone at some point in episode 2. But you don't pick it up at that point. I think it's supposed to be like a tease that the phones work, essentially, or like a mini jump scare. But the landline phones are connected and they are mechanical, so they still work without electricity. And because they're all connected across the certain areas, maybe not the whole island, but certain areas are interconnected, every phone would ring at the same time. And so Will can answer and then pick up the call, and hear who it is, and is introduced to someone who later names himself as Jace. But it's a woman talking about what Will is doing, what side he's on. Is he working with the prisoners? And then Will asks her what her name is, what's her affiliation, what she's up to. You know, these are two complete strangers, and they need to build trust. So that's what they do across the game, similar to how Molly and Astrid will talk over the phones over the course of episode 3, gaining trust with each other and being a little more open about what they're thinking, like their thoughts, etc. Oops, just bumped the mic. So the takeaway of that first call with Jace is that she is essentially a saboteur trying to stop Mathis from breaking Donner out, because Donner is very dangerous. And I'm guessing she's the one that initiated lockdown somehow, and got the solitary wing of the prison cut off from the outside. And she's telling him to decide what side you're on, because there's kind of like a war of attrition going on. And then hangs up, and then, you know, they'll talk more over the course of the game, similar to episode 3 with Astrid and Molly. After that, Will finds the medicine outside the wall. This is somewhere down in the Blackrock Valley. Encounters the body of a prison guard most likely doesn't even know about the prison riot before they died. Kind of lucky that they got taken out by wolves, I guess. And then sneaks back in, and is able to give the medicine to Franklin. And that kicks off the power plant chapter. So if we want to answer any questions, we can do that now.
Yeah, I don't see any questions. And Nexus is saying something that when he played episode 4, he thought it was Molly that was on the other side of the phone talking to Will.
No.
Yeah, I could kind
voices.
of guess that might be the first thought, but yeah, the voices are definitely different right away, and the attitude. So
yeah, when I mentioned the ringing phone in episode 2, had Will been able to pick it up, he would have likely heard Molly and Astrid talking, because all those phones are connected, and you can pick them up from multiple locations and hear the same conversation. So that's likely what happened. It was one of their conversations over in Pleasant Valley that the phone rang in the same building as Will. So that makes you question how...
It probably only rang once because it got picked up by Astrid.
Yeah. And that makes you question if Mathis had been listening in on the phone calls, or someone else had been listening in on the phone calls between Will and Jace.
Yeah, there's some definite story ties in there. And then because I out of curiosity myself, we'll back up a little bit. The fact that they were talking about someone hunting them with the bow, would it be safe to say that when they captured Will at the dam, they must have drugged him through Winding River and then into Pleasant Valley, that's where they started meeting up with Molly, right?
That's where they would have come from Pleasant Valley.
All right.
Because their goal, when they going back to like episode 1, when the bus crashes in between the first flare and Will waking up, Mathis and his crew are on the Keeper's Pass side of the tunnel, and Hobbs and the other prisoners get stuck in Milton. So the Mathis and his group make their way towards Blackrock, but they get lost. There's a blizzard going on overnight. In fact, there's a very strong possibility that Mathis and his group and Jace almost run into each other, because they're in the same location roughly. But it seems that Jace didn't arrive in Blackrock until after the prisoners had taken over, which happened before the first flare. I'm guessing it had to have, because the timelines don't really align. So I think Mathis arrives much later. Mathis really isn't the leader of the whole prison group, just his small group of acquaintances. And I'm guessing when he arrives later on with Will, it's kind of like the Mathis's first time at the prison.
I'm wondering if Mathis's group was a little bit bigger too, because
Potentially, yeah.
with Molly, do you find a couple of prisoners that would have been in their path
Yeah.
that are shot with the arrows? I'm wondering,
Yeah.
there's might be
the Blackrock side quest in episode 3 does mention Mathis in some of the notes, how like he's not a great leader, and they were abandoned. Some of the prisoners were abandoned, so they
could have been wounded, and he just left them behind. Yeah.
Mathis ends up leaving them behind, I guess, or they get separated. But yeah, that's kind of like a prelude to their arrival at Blackrock. They get lost in Pleasant Valley, trying to find their way to Blackrock, and then arrive at the dam, encounter Will, and make their way the other way. I don't know how they figured out where Blackrock is, but I guess they figured it out eventually. But yeah, Mathis's group definitely had one other person in it by name Leclerc, who was killed by the bow-wielding hunter, aka, I'll just say it, it was Molly.
Molly,
Yeah.
We can tell it's the same person that was killing the prisoners in episode 3. Are we good to move on then?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. So after healing, or not healing, but like applying the medicine to Franklin, they have a short conversation about how the lockdown that is happening is out of the ordinary. It's not supposed to be happening, and that there's someone out there that's potentially messing with the system. Will does know who it is, and their conversation is cut short because Mathis starts making his way over. Mathis just casually walks by, and he looks over to Will's cell, almost like he knew the whole time that it was open, and it was. He pushes the door, and it opens wide open. I'm guessing he knew that Heller and Vakam were pretty incompetent, and that they would not be able to help Franklin. So he guessed that Will was sent out to do their work for him. And after that, he decides to send Will out to the power plant on the other side of the valley to see what's going on with the power. Now, at this point, I think Will has a good idea that the power issues isn't because of power generators, power plants, etc. I think he has a good understanding that the auroras have something to do with it. But obviously Mathis is, in his own world. So even if Will decided to tell him it's not going to work, Mathis wouldn't care. He would still send him to go figure it out. And again, they're trying to build. Mathis is trying to build trust with him, but I don't think that's his intention. But he knows that Will needs the hard case, because why else would he be carrying it if it was important? So that's kind of like a deposit. Like, you go do this thing for me, but you better not think about leaving because I've got your deposit, which is the hard case. So it's kind of like a chain, essentially, to keep him from leaving. And yeah, Will would make his way over to the dam. It's kind of a long journey because of the avalanche. And at the dam, he sees the power plant as normal. It's nothing's broken. Obviously, nothing's running, but it's not broken. Obviously, water's still flowing. And he gets another phone call from Jace. This time, she does introduce herself by her name, I believe. And they talk about how she briefly mentions that the power problem isn't because of the power plant, and alludes to her knowing something about the auroras and the power issues, which she elaborates on more later. And so they decide that they need to trust each other in order to get out of this situation and stop Mathis. So she asks him to do something for her because he is out there, and they trust him enough to go do their errands, so it's kind of like an excuse, like an alibi, essentially. And she has him go through the steam tunnels, which actually leads back to the prison. And going through that, he is able to reach the locking mechanism underneath the solitary wing of the prison. And by destroying that, he is able to essentially lock Donner into solitary forever. There would be no way to go in and break him out unless they literally blew up the walls, which would end up being their plan later, but they wouldn't know. So yeah, breaking the locking mechanism would seal Donner's fate had it not been for the dynamite they find later. Now that I think about it, the power plant is a really short chapter. A lot of it's just going through the steam tunnels and walking to the dam.
Mhm.
So yeah, Will leaves, goes through the steam tunnels, breaks the locking mechanism, returns, and then is confronted by Mathis about the broken locking mechanism. They found out really quickly what happened. At this point we're on chapter 3, but do you want me to keep going? The chapter 2 is very short, I guess.
Yeah, you can keep going. Nobody's writing any questions at the moment.
Yeah.
3 is also relatively short. So we have the confrontation between Mathis and Will asking what happened with the locking mechanism, if he knew anything about it. Obviously, Will denies it. I don't think Mathis believes it. I mean, any negative response that Mathis receives, I just feel like he doesn't accept it no matter what, even if it's the truth. Like a doctor could say his son's daughter's dead after the explosion later on, and he still wouldn't believe it. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't believe Will's response at all, but then has him do another errand, which is to go acquire detonators for the dynamite they found. They found it in storage from a while back, and Franklin explains how they couldn't get it off the island, so they just kept it in storage. Mathis threatens to beat him again. I think he does start beating him again after that, but he just threatens him, and Franklin spills the beans and says that there's an old mine up the valley closer to the mountain, and that's where Will would go to find the detonators. And Mathis would tell Will, "You got to do it fast, or I'm gonna start beating this guy." He literally just beats him mercilessly. I kind of feel bad for Franklin. And then at I was about to say dam. At the mine, up the mountain, you'll encounter poison gas, obstacles, an old-timey elevator with a crank. Oh no. My viewers are now going to start dropping the clank in the chat. Oh no, what have I done? And yeah, deep in the mine, you'll find the old detonators that got left behind. And then on his way out, Will will hear the phone ring again, and it's Jace again, as usual. And this is, I think, one of the most important parts of the story. So there's two halves. One half, for the Quiet Apocalypse part of, so there's, going into episode 5, there's 4 pillars of the story. There's the Will and Astrid stuff, there's the Mathis stuff, there's the Quiet Apocalypse, which involves the Auroras and Outward and all that, and then there's the Perseverance Mills stuff. So the Perseverance Mills pillar is kind of tied to Astrid, and you learn a lot about that in episode 3, and then at the end of episode 4 in that final cutscene. When it comes to Will, he's like more directly he's more directly tied to the Quiet Apocalypse pillar. So he's learning about the Auroras, the power, how everything's broken, the patterns of nature are broken. And this is when Jace explains she says something very important. It's a very key word that kind of explains what actually is happening. So she drops the word astrophysically, and astrophysics is the study of space. So when I made a video called "What is Wintermute," going over like what the idea of what is this word, what does it mean. And I talked to a friend who was an astrophysics major I met in college. And he said that astrophysics would be the study of space. And so in the context of this game, the likely culprit of the quiet apocalypse, well, the thing that caused it is the sun. And so the sun would eject a massive cloud of plasma, and that would hit the earth. And if it's powerful enough, would generate an EMP effect, which is what we see at the beginning of the game. We see the first flare, which is a powerful aurora. It's literally generating an EMP, and anything connected to the power grid, any satellites in space, all of that gets fried worldwide, everything. So I don't think we can expect to see any kind of satellites working after this at all. Any astronauts in space are likely dead. Ships that are out in the ocean won't have any more GPS. All of that is gone. And that is all backed by science. And this game is very, very ingrained in science. Like, there's a lot of scientific truth to, or facts backing up a lot of the things about this apocalypse. There are some things that don't make sense, like the glowing wolves, the aurora humming sound effect. Those are creative liberties, but the actual, like, solar flare hitting the earth causing an aurora and then the EMP effect, that is actually real. And it did happen in the past, and I believe the first flare is supposed to be like the modern day Carrington event, which is a massive solar flare that hit earth in the 1850s. Back then there was only telegraph lines, and they could be powered for multiple days without actual connections to electricity, so you could still communicate during that time.
Well, there were two other ones. I know one I think it was in 1989 that had happened in Canada, and it took out like a large portion of their power grid. So
there can be more localized ones, like smaller ones. But the first flare is definitely a global event, as we can see with like the Blackrock announcement. We're now in a completely new location. And so when she drops the word astrophysically, she says astrophysically speaking, I think it's not good or something like that. That kind of ties everything together with the whole geomagnetic event and the auroras and all that. It makes more sense. So she explains how, like, everything is tied to the auroras, all the different changes, the wildlife, the weather. Well, she doesn't say weather, but it makes sense because the sun drives the weather on Earth. All of it is tied together. This is not connected to the Perseverance Mill stuff. This is completely separate. So we got to keep that in mind. She also mentions that she works with Atwood, which catches Will's ears. He recognizes that name, and so he tells her he needs to see Atwood immediately. So they need to get out of there as soon as possible, but they need to also deal with Mathis. And Jace also mentions Suzuki, the Suzuki radio telescope, which is a former government facility that Atwood works at, and that Jace was working with Atwood as a I think a doctorate maybe for astrophysics. I believe she's a student essentially, but she's been working at Suzuki. And so at this point, their plan is the previous plan is kind of, about to be ruined because the prisoners have the dynamite. So Jace has to rely on the nuclear option, which Will jokes around a little bit about how is it a real nuclear bomb? Obviously not. But her nuclear option is to sabotage the detonation of the dynamite. So Will just has to proceed as planned with giving the detonators over to the prisoners while Jace is doing her thing. She's very intelligent, very, very smart. She knows a lot, which is very strange. But she's an astrophysics major. She also knows a bit about hacking and engineering, looking at blueprints and stuff like that. So she's very clearly incredibly intelligent. so she would be a very valuable source of knowledge for the future. After that, they depart. Will makes his way to the exit, and there's an earthquake. There's various earthquakes across episode 2 and 3, but this one, like the one that Astrid encounters in the mine on her way out of Pleasant Valley, causes the ceiling to collapse, almost killing Will. We can add that to the counter, actually. We don't really know, but add that to the concussion counter. And that forces him to go the other way, because on his way into the mine, he can cross the bridge that's there at the end of the road, past where the prepper cache would be in survival mode. But we have to go down into the ravine, the river valley, and climb down and then climb back up. So he has to go down the path we would take to go back to the prison, essentially, in survival. Mm-hmm. And then on his way back, an Aurora lights everything up. There's electricity and all that. There's Aurora wolves. And he arrives at the prison only to be greeted by the prisoners, all the 3 main prisoners, the Mathis and his crew, about something that Will doesn't know that happened when he was gone. So they take him in and kind of tie him up again like they did before. We could stop here for a moment because that would be the start of the final full chapter.
Okay.
Any questions? Any concerns?
Nexus was just saying Will isn't the smartest conversationalist either.
No.
Talking to someone like Mathis, you need to try and give him answers.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta remember, he was just a simple bush pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Not really predisposed to deal with a psychopath on Mathis' level. So.
His charisma is at level 1.
Yeah.
Astrid would probably be a little more armed for that, because she's probably been dealing with people on that same level in the corporation she's been dealing with.
Yeah. Salaries in North Hemisphere got cooked back in the 90s from a solar flare burst. Jesus.
I think he meant satellites. He was talking about the auto correction was kicking him. And the other thing too, it's funny you mentioned the Carrington event, because I was reading some stuff about that just recently. And they were talking about how when you mentioned that the equipment was working, that they would unplug it from the batteries and it would work, and there was actually people that were injured because of getting electrocuted from the system being overcharged. So something
and I believe that explains what's happening with each aurora. These solar flares that are hitting the earth are so strong, they are generating electricity across the whole world, kind of like an electric field, essentially. And
that's why we're getting like things like the glimmer fog and these high charged electric things in the that'll kill you in the dam or and then
judging by some of the screenshots from Blackfrost's announcement, we'll potentially see electrical fires as well. And maybe just more electrical hazards in general. That's fingers crossed. That would be very cool to see, like a cabin burning because of an electrical fire from an aurora, and then maybe later on you can loot that and see if there's anything that survived.
Like your safe house gets burned down because you.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool, but also that would suck. But yeah, that cutscene at the mine over the conversation is very important for understanding the quiet apocalypse pillar of the story. It kind of ties everything together, makes it all make sense. You kind of have to look it up a little bit to understand it, but Jace does explain it is all tied to the auroras. Anything new about episode 5? No. I'm under the impression we are going to get it before the end of the year. And I think that means like probably November, December. I don't know. You'd have to ask Hinterland.
Yeah.
I remember Raphael saying like a month ago he had a dev diary in the works. But like where is that dev diary?
Yeah, and he said soon, and then the last thing I saw from them was they were showing off some upgrades to the visualizations for La Long Dark.
I wonder if they'll be packaging everything together, like episode 5 and the visual upgrades come out at the same time. That way, Survival
Yeah.
and Wintermute both get an update.
It's possible.
That would be cool, but who knows?
Yeah, I almost wonder too, because there's a lot of stuff like just playing Wintermute, like there's no does or anything in it. Like there's animals and like a lot of new items they've just added into survival. So I wonder if they're going back through and trying to add things in so they're consistent, which might
Maybe.
be.
That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, I think we can proceed then, but we're almost done here, and then we can take questions about all of Wintermute and all of the lore. If anyone has any questions about anything, we can talk about anything except for the tales. We should save the tales for another time. All right, Donner. Will is tied up again. He's being questioned by Mathis. Mathis is clearly very angry because he knows about the saboteur, and he knows that Will is involved with them. Mathis knows because he was quite literally beating the information out of Franklin. And then they pull Franklin's body out. He's on a stretcher, clearly deceased. And at this point, Mathis tells Willie that he did have a purpose for him. He was gonna use him for not directly, but he had a plan for him, and now he doesn't have a purpose anymore, Will. So, he decides to just get rid of him. He explains that their original plan was to leave the island, but he now sees that the island is kind of like their kingdom, and they can take over and do whatever they want. So there's no reason for them to leave now. And that's when Mathis decides Will has no purpose anymore, so it's time to get rid of him, especially after all he has done to cause harm to him and his son Donner. I guess all of this is happening during the Aurora still, so Jace is able to see everything on camera and would later use the intercom as well. So everything still works to an extent. And I'm guessing that she's watching over. Actually, I have to look back at that cutscene. Is there a camera looking into Will's cell? Because maybe that's how she knows. But she times the early detonation of the dynamite right when Will is about to get hit in the head again. So we don't have to add that to the counter, but the explosion does cause Will to have broken ribs. So we could add that to that counter, broken ribs counter.
Another injury.
If you never noticed that, the explosion causes broken ribs. So I'm wondering if that'll be a thing you have to deal with at the beginning of episode 5. We'll see. That shakes the prison, knocks everyone over, breaks the chair Will is in, and lets him get away, essentially. Will runs down the hallway to see Mathis yelling out what happened, why did the dynamite explode so early? And it turns out Solitary is now buried under rubble, at least the front entrance. And excuse me, I had to burp there. I hope nobody heard that. If you watch my live streams, that is very common. Mathis asks Will, are you happy? This is the result of your actions. Are you happy with what has happened? More or less. And that's when Jace initiates lockdown, closes all the cell doors across the prison, giving Will some space away from Mathis. But before they part ways, essentially, Mathis yells at him, and this is honestly one of the most terrifying moments in the game, when he yells at him and says, I will destroy everything you love. And I really do believe that's gonna be key to the Mathis pillar of the story. He's going to try to kill everything and everyone in his way in order to get to Will eventually. And that means that Astrid, Jace, Atwood, and everyone at Perseverance Mills is in danger when we get to episode 5. So keep that in mind. Mathis is going to come at Will with everything he has. And because they're separated by the gate, Will is able to escape, get to the warden's office, and get the hard case finally. And has one more call with Jace just to, ask, hey, did you have something to do with that explosion? And she explains, kind of. And that's when they decide they need to leave. It's time to go. The Mathis situation is taken care of for now. Well, the Donner situation. Mathis would still be a huge issue later on. Soon could mean anything. What do you mean soon? Sorry, I got distracted by the chat.
Doing a quick look at
Yeah.
some photographs of what you were talking about with the security camera. Nothing is showing. Obviously, you might see more in a video, but not showing anything.
Mackenzie's a freaking Viking.
And then the other thing too about what you were talking about, where Matheson makes that threat. He's already proven that he's willing to throw everything away to get vindication.
Yeah. He's thrown himself into jail in order to punish the driver. He killed an innocent woman in the dam. He's killed many people. He's gonna do anything he can to get revenge.
Yeah, nothing to lose and no rules. So, yeah.
Yeah. After escaping the warden's office, Will has to get through the prison yard. You can get shot at. I always thought the gunshots from that would break your ribs, but I guess not. You can get shot if you sit still too long. But yeah, Will gets to the tunnels, gets all the way down to the dam, finally meets Jace for the first time in person, and then they just congratulate each other about their work that they did together. You know, they started off kind of rocky. They didn't have any trust for each other, but they had to build that over time, and their trust has now led to Donner being trapped and Mathis's plans ruined. But that's where the plan kind of ends, and so they need to figure out what to do next. Obviously, they need to get to Atwood, and that's when Mathis arrives with the rest of the prisoners. Mathis just does the usual spiel, how like he's gonna kill Will. He's gonna what does he say? He said something about him being a bad penny. I don't know. It's some weird dialogue there.
He does a typical monologuing that most villains do.
Yeah. Yeah, a little too much talky, not enough fighty, essentially. But the news breaks that Donner might be dying, kind of sets Mathis off, and that starts the fight at the very end of episode 4. Will holds his own. Mathis says, "That's what I like to see, a little will to live," which I think might be why that achievement is called that. Or it might be that because Will is both a name of a person and also, what do you call that? An action? Will. It's been so long since I've taken like a proper English grammar class. Don't ask me.
It's an adverb.
Adverb. There we go.
An action word.
So yeah, the fight ensues. Will is able to hold him off a bit, but then Mathis kind of goes berserk when Heller says that Donner is dying, and Jace has to intervene momentarily in order to help Will, and that's when Will grabs Jace, and they fall over the ledge into the water. That's the outtake pipe through the dam. And that would mean they are traveling downriver, going westward, I believe, on Great Bear Island, which at this point they are off the map. They're not on the main map down the valley. And that would be where episode 4 more or less ends. They kind of look back at the prison as it's burning and say that, or Jace says Mathis is gonna go looking for them, and he's not gonna stop until they're dead or Mathis is dead. And so that kind of leaves off where the Mathis pillar of the story is at the moment. It's very clear that Mathis will show up. I mean, he's confirmed to show up, but there's gonna be a big battle at some point between Will and Mathis, and anyone in Mathis's way is very much in danger. So there's probably gonna be a few deaths Maybe not major character deaths, but maybe some of the side characters in episode 5. We'll see. But that's where the main episode ends. And then we have what I call epilogue. It's still part of Donner, but it's the final cutscene with Astrid arriving at Perseverance Mills. And she's greeted by 2 people initially that have their faces covered. I've talked about this cutscene many times. The face coverings are very important. We don't know why, but if you play through the tales, maybe it makes a little more sense. And they trying to remember word for word what they say, but one of them says another one,
But
but
this
it's
one's
not.
different.
But she's not drowned like the others. Maybe not a quarantine breaker. And then the third person comes in. And it's the woman that Astrid was talking to on the phone at Seraphim. This is Jane Yang in the credits. She's perfectly fine. She has no face covering. Her eyes are normal. And then if you look at the other 2 guys, their eyes look a little baggy, like they haven't been sleeping. So again, if you know what's going on in the tails, the eyes and the face mask might point you towards the answers to what's happening at Perseverance Mills. And so Jane's looking around the boat trying to find the hard case, and she drops the line, "Where is it? Where's the cure?" The hard case is the cure to the disease that is plaguing Perseverance Mills. She stole it. Astrid stole it from Seraphim because she was working there. They were taking their sweet time to get it out to the public, probably because they were trying to keep it secret. The quarantine and the outbreak and all that. So she steals it. I'm guessing that might have caused her to become wanted, or like getting her fired or whatever. That's when she arrives at Will's hangar. She convinces Will to take him, and that's where things end up. They're separated, but they're on their way to Perseverance Mills. And so they have to wait for Will to arrive. And Astrid, the crazy thing is Astrid doesn't know that Will has the hard case. She just has to trust that he has it. Otherwise, everyone at Perseverance Mills is doomed, because no cure. Who knows what's going to happen? But again, the tales will give you some of the answers as to what might happen, assuming that is the connection between them. These outbreaks that have occurred in multiple places on this island in different time periods with eerily similar symptoms.
And I don't know, and you can tell me not to mention this, but there's also a quick mention in the security chief's logs about what they were doing with some of the patients who were having problems with this same thing, and they were locking them up.
Yeah.
To keep them safe. And I'm wondering if, because they were talking about people finding people drowned, whatever, and in that cutscene in episode 2, I think it is, where it shows Astrid at Seraphim.
Episode 3.
Yeah, she mentioned something to her about the fact that daughter had gotten, it was another close call, wondering that maybe they found her at the edge of the water or something.
It's definitely someone that Jane knows. It's a personal relative or something, daughter or maybe grandmother or mother or something like that. And when she says you of all people would know the importance of this, because I think it might be her daughter, it might be Jane's daughter, because Astrid would know what it's like to have a tragedy involving your child, essentially. I think it's pointing towards that it's her daughter or maybe another loved one, and Astrid does have that experience, the trauma of something bad happening to a child, essentially. I don't want to talk too much about that last cutscene, because I think we should save that for if we want to do a podcast about the Tales story.
Yeah, we
the
can
Tales
definitely
trilogy.
We can definitely work into that. And then we definitely want to we want to get back to the 5th part too when it hits, and everybody's had a time to digest it as well. So we can certainly dive into the Tales too, Because I think you would have to agree with this. A lot of the stuff in the Tales is kind of a precursor to what we're going to be seeing in
Yeah.
Black Frost 2.
Yeah.
Or Long Dark 2.
Mm-hmm. The Long Dark 2. No, I wouldn't. I don't think so. The way I see it, everything on Great Bear Island is supposed to be a contained story.
Maybe I'm not saying it right. Not necessarily the story, but some of the features. The act of having these tales built into the survival mode.
I see what you mean. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
more game related
Yeah,
functions, not story.
Yeah, we talked about that. How
A little bit, yeah.
we believe the Tales is kind of like a prelude, mechanically a prelude to, or like an experiment for Black Frost
To see how the community would respond to it.
Yeah, like how we respond to the built-in stories into survival mode. You know, the cougar, the trader, etc. The cooking. I believe everything from the expansion has been very well received, minus the cougar. Maybe misery, but I don't know. Oh, I think I might have been dropped. Oh no,
No, you're still on.
okay. I can hear like the slightest background noise from you guys. It's so faint, so you might not hear it in the stream, but like it went silent for a moment. So I thought maybe I got dropped. Streamlabs shenanigans as usual.
Yep.
Yeah, that final cutscene, we can save that for a Tales related podcast in the future, because there's some very specific details in the cutscene and even dialogue that helped me when I was going through everything formulate my theory as to how it all connects. Because as the roadmap on the Tales expansion says, the Tales story, the Tales trilogy, has a connection to Wintermute. But that doesn't mean that the Tales trilogy will come up in Wintermute. So I would not expect a mention of Rudiger or the Langston Mine, or maybe John Industries, maybe a machine of sorts, because this similar plague, there's 2 different plagues that are happening on the island at different time periods. So the source of the first plague might still be around in some form. But yeah, we can save that for another time.
Yep. So looking at chat, and if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat, but I'll go through comments. So Piccolo is saying, so we get to start episode 5 with broken ribs and hypothermia.
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely.
Took a little...
And 27 concussions.
That's how Will be starting. Broken ribs and hypothermia. Astrid will have hypothermia, dehydration, and maybe frostbite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Astrid's been through a lot. I mean, Will has too, but like Astrid survived blood loss and hypothermia at the beginning of episode 3, and then she's doing it again. Minus the blood loss in episode
Neither of these
5.
characters are going to be in their prime when the battle starts.
There might be some time jump, but we don't know. No idea. We know what's going to happen. We just don't know how it's going to happen. I don't see the sense in trying to speculate, like where we're going to start. We're going to start right from the end of episode 4. Are we going to start like a few days later and they're already at Suzuki or whatever, or Perseverance Mills? I'm just hoping that the episode is as big as they keep describing it as, because there's a lot to cover. There's 4 core story threads to get through, and like I said earlier, I think it is all going to be self-contained to just Great Bear Island and just the Long Dark one. I wouldn't expect anything from the first game story-wise to make its way over to Black Frost.
The only thing I can think of is that they might get word from Atwood or the people at Suzuki that this is not localized. This is a worldwide event, which they're still not 100% on that. But that, I would think that would be the only thing that they would get out of that, would be that this is not just happening here. This is happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And but at that point, the entire world for them is Great Bear Island.
Yeah, I think a year in, people would have figured it out. I would hope so.
Yeah.
Like, this is the end of the world. This is the new world,
norm.
essentially. The new normal. I think I saw something. I hope they add Perseverance meals as a new region. At the moment, we believe it's been confirmed it's not going to be. Yeah, Piccolo did say that. I don't think it
the
will
only way
be,
we're going to... Go ahead. I'm sorry, Toasty.
I don't think we'll see it until it's modded in. Most likely.
Yeah, I was
I think
gonna
that's
say,
what you were going to say.
Yeah, it's exactly. When they have the full modding tools and mapping becomes a much easier task than what the Long Dark development's been putting up with. Yeah, they're going to be able to write in some of these places much easier and tie them in.
Apparently, that was always the intention, that the Wintermute regions would be exclusive to Wintermute, but they ended up adding Mountain Town and Blackrock eventually. Was Broken Railroad out when Wintermute dropped originally? Or was that added with Wintermute episode 2?
That I can't answer.
I don't remember. It's like the Muskeg dropped before, and and Pleasant Valley as well. Those were pre-Wintermute, so they were already in survival.
Yeah.
But like their intention was always to have those exclusive, which is probably why they made so many survival mode exclusive regions to make up for it. But I think the backlash has always caused them to add them in later.
Yeah.
Like episode 4 dropped, I think, in October 2021, and they added Blackrock and Keeper's Pass in December 2021, 2 months later. So yeah, it takes a lot of work to get the regions in both modes if they need to be, because they have to make some changes to the world space.
Yeah.
And I believe there's going to be more than one region for episode 5, because I don't
Suzuki
think
Station.
I don't think Suzuki is anywhere near Perseverance Mills.
Well, it
So-
makes sense that it's more in the mountains at a higher elevation.
Yeah, and
For an observatory.
Perseverance is on the coast.
Yeah, I would think Suzuki's going to be more like a Sundered Pass kind of region,
Potentially, yeah.
something along that lines. But
yeah,
I think we're
if
going to
they-
see a lot of those changes with the modding community.
Yeah, if
when,
they never
when
release,
that comes out.
if they never release those maps, they'll get modded in eventually.
And then Hinterland will get that all done for free.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. You guys should definitely talk about. You should get a modder on and talk about the future modding prospects.
Yeah.
Maybe you can invite Kai, I think his name is, the lead developer of the Long development.
That's not a bad idea.
That mod.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Because they just released their 4th map for that. I think the final map.
Wow.
Yeah. They have 2 big ones and then 2 smaller ones, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I've seen
Definitely-
it. I want to install them and play them, but I have only seen them at this point. They look really cool.
I had it installed at one point, and I think there's a way to fix it, but installing mods and then playing non-modded survival saves will break your save if you remove the mod. So I can't do that because I'm actively going through something wicked, the 1000-day achievement. So I'm afraid to like play with the mods and then accidentally open that save file and then break it if I remove the mod.
Yeah, I've got
'Cause
something
if they-
similar to that with the Cougar. We
Yeah.
did that on older versions, so I have to be very careful not to open that.
Yeah, and then if they update the game, that breaks the mod. So it's always an issue. Okay, we can.
I'll be the one is asking, not lore related, but trying to do an interloper run or matches still at the Pleasant Valley farmhouse still. No, so they're in the gas station at Thompson's Crossing.
We can now open it up to any story or lore related questions, side quests, etc.
Thanks for joining us, Faye. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Hi, Faye. Thanks.
Southern Pass, most beautiful and worst region of them all. I don't think it's that bad. I haven't played that much Thunder Pass. I gotta do like one region playthrough in that.
It takes some getting
At some
used
point.
to.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that. Because I didn't really like it first either, and now I'm kind of like, it's still not my favorite, but I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
I still need to explore more of it, and I've got something kind of brewing in the background that we'll be including along stay in that part of the world. But I'm not going to commit anything like I've done in the past until I've either gotten further in or they're completed, because I've run into several situations where I have the best intentions and then work or life gets in the way and I end up not being able to get back to a project. So I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah. So I have a question, Toasty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Go for
kind
it.
of a more personal one, I guess. But is there anything in the story that you don't like or that doesn't make sense to you that you can't like add up, that you're like, what the heck is this?
I will have to think about that. There is one buffer memory that I'm kind of confused about. It's one in Broken Railroad. It mentions, I believe it was the one where the Forest Talkers sabotaged a Briarhouse truck and they have to drive along the trestle because they use the railroad to get from the coastal highway to the maintenance yard. And so they asked their, I think, manager or supervisor, whatever, can we please take the shortcut all the way around? Not the shortcut, it's the other way around. So the long way from the railroad, the maintenance yard to coastal highway. What other way are they talking about? I know, obviously, the in-game world space doesn't represent what's in the lore. Like, Milton is supposed to be, in the 80s, it was supposed to be 1,000 people strong.
Yeah.
In Milton, sorry, in the lore, it was 1,000 people strong. In-game, it doesn't even look like it would have 100 people. And obviously, half the houses are foreclosed on.
Yeah.
And then half of the remaining houses were burnt down. There's really only a few dozen left. What happened to all the other houses? I'm guessing they were maybe torn down eventually to make, or to salvage the resources or whatever, but it doesn't, the world space in game doesn't represent what's in the lore. So there's another way from Broken Railroad to Coastal Highway without taking the railroad. So where is that pathway? It's got to be blocked somewhere. But it would allow them to get to the highway, essentially. Not sure about that. That's one thing that's really confusing about something from the lore, essentially. Oops, just. If anything else, I'd have to think about that. No, I can't really think about it. But I'll let you know. I'll think about that.
Okay.
Any other comments here we can go through?
Snow shelters.
The snow shelters.
Yeah.
Oh no.
We stirred the pot with the snow shelter video.
We did.
Yeah, it was a good video.
Thank you.
Next week's is going to be even more exciting.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a debate.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jitwire and I bust out. It's like she has, hammer, and I have the hatchet, and we go at it. We battle.
Oh. The bot's doing bot things.
Oh no. What?
I don't know. The comment hasn't showed up on screen yet, so
Yeah,
can't see what it was.
I don't think we limited it to not let people post links. Did we?
Posting links.
No, I don't think so, but
I wouldn't let people do that at all. I think you can do that through YouTube. You can prevent people from linking anything. I just wouldn't, not a good idea.
Yeah, if it's something you want to share, you can do it on the Discord, and then
Hmm.
if we would deem it necessary, we can put it in the descriptions and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Oh, okay. You can see the comment. It says, "Don't like how Mathis is so relentless." Dot cannot get rid of the guy. I think it
Oh.
might. I think it believes that's a website.
Oh.
Interesting. Not a very smart bot.
No.
I did tone him down
Yeah.
though. He wasn't yelling every 5 seconds about caps, and we had a long talk. We had a disciplinary action talk.
I'm trying to think. In episode 4, there's a lot of fun side quests, but a bunch of those are actually potentially related to the tale, so I don't want to cover those right now.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the which one was it? I think it was Blackrock Rumors, where you go around, you find the notes, and it leads you to like a mini side quest. There was the gold mining one. There was the hungry wolf one. I have a theory on
the
that.
naturalist one is there too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I have a theory about that. Really, really aggressive wolf. It makes more sense now with the release of the Far Territory and the Zone of Contamination. So you can run into that quest somewhere. I don't remember where, but it's a really aggressive wolf that has been spotted in the valley, and they invite a naturalist, someone that would study, wildlife. And they go down the valley and find the wolf and determine that it is really aggressive for some reason, and it's most likely not from around here, that it either was brought there. Oh, actually, I think I'm mistaking that for a buffer memory from Mystery Lake, because the Mystery Lake those buffer memories are from conservationists, like studying the environment there, like making sure things are in balance. They mentioned that in that specifically, they're mentioning how there's too many predators, so they need to determine if they're being introduced somehow by someone, which is interesting. But the naturalist determines that they need to move the wolf. They don't want to cull it. They want to move it because it's would be interesting to study. So my theory is that really aggressive wolf was a former poisoned wolf from the Zone of Contamination.
Mm.
And then it migrated somehow over. It would be a massive journey, like a long journey, but there could be shortcuts that we don't know about through the mountains. The wolf makes its way over to Lower Great Bear and is super aggressive because those wolves are very desperate. And it doesn't look like a poison wolf, obviously, because that wasn't a thing back then. But it's in a place where there's where food's more plentiful, and there's no poison in the air and the ground, so it was able to recover, but it's still really aggressive. I was actually talking about this the other day on stream because I'm my Something Wiccan playthrough. I'm going through the tales finally, like the second and third tale in those regions. And I'm going through the Zone of Contamination, and the poison wolves are really confusing. Why do they exist, and why are they so malnourished when there's plenty of food? If you go in the fringes of the region, there's plenty of food and not a lot of poison gas.
True.
So why are they so malnourished? Is the malnourishment coming from the poison in the environment, or is it because they're not finding enough food? But like, you'll go through the fringes of the region, there's plenty of deer and rabbits, and like and food for them, for the prey, or the prey.
It would almost think that it would have to be environmental. Because
so then makes me wish they had also done poisoned versions of the prey where they're also malnourished. There's no natural foods for them, but there's plenty of natural foods and there's plenty of prey.
Or there should have been more dead carcasses because of the lack of food and the poisoning.
Yeah,
would have made more sense.
That really bothers me about the ZOC. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. everything should be malnourished there or dead and dying.
It's almost like you should walk through there and find more carcasses than you would anything else, and the carcasses should be poisoned. So, like, if you cut out, any meat off the deer, it's poisoned. You can't, cooking level 5 your way out of that one.
Are you hungry when you are sick? Actually, no. Last year I had a very, very bad case of norovirus. It was like an outbreak that happened here in North America. 2 Februarys ago, basically. I was so sick I could not eat for a whole day. I literally vomited every bit of food.
I was going to say
it was so bad.
I can share a little bit of a story here that would fall into this chemical thing, and it's not anything I've ever mentioned on anything, and I don't like to wear it out on my sleeve, but back in 2001, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I actually have been through chemotherapy, and you go through that, you cannot keep food down. So I'm wondering if maybe using that as a roadmap with the chemical sickness of the wolves, maybe it isn't that there isn't food available, but maybe they just can't keep it in their system. Now, why the other animals aren't poisoned and you don't see more death, that, then we go the because game thing.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a correlation between being chemically ill and not being able to keep food down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Nexus also made a comment of maybe the wolves had eaten all the poison wildlife and that's why there is none. See, that actually makes sense to me because wolves, whenever they hunt, they're going to target the weakest. So maybe the healthy game that we see, those wolves can't actually catch because they're also ill and they're weakened. So that kind of makes sense to me that they ate
like
all the poison wildlife. And they're not. Yeah.
That makes me concerned whether if I should eat those cattails or not that I found.
Yep, right?
Because there's an area by the idol camp that has like a pool, an area where there's poison. And it leads into that long cave that you can go all the way through. And it leads, on the other side leads to the mine, essentially, more or less. It's like another way to the mine. There's a bunch of cattails in that poison field, so I wonder if I should just throw those away. Yeah, if you go in that area, there's a lot of wildlife and a lot of cattails and mushrooms. So like,
just do the 5-second rule and just brush them off. It'll be fine.
5-second rule. Yeah,
it's just sprinkles. That's all it is. Just sprinkles.
Yep. Well, we're coming up on an hour and 20, guys. So I guess if there's no last minute questions from chat, we should probably start wrapping up. Yeah, why wouldn't you eat the entire cat and not
Oh no.
Thanks,
it's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole
There's not
podcast.
one. Yeah, if you think about it, it's funny. There's no dogs. There's no pets.
Yet. There's no dogs yet.
No yet. But in Great Bear. There's tons of dog food.
There is a dog in the lore. Then there's tons of dog food and dog houses.
Yeah. There's a lot of little missing things.
Grey Mother's former husband, Martin Barker, had a dog in the lore. The dogs, no dogs.
Yeah, they talk about them, but it's funny that there's no remnants of it.
I don't think any dog would survive with that many wolves.
And not for very long, I get it.
Not for very long, yeah.
But you would think you might find a stray, one here or there.
Yeah, and one of the buffer memories in the Orca gas station do mention dog food delivery is also difficult. So yeah, there's dogs around. There's dog houses all over the place, but yeah, I don't think they would survive very long. Or maybe it's just because they don't want to add dogs in.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of that too. Like what I was joking about, like the lack of bathrooms in places and stuff. A lot of that was probably because models were expensive to make.
The lack of alcohol too, as well. It's you can see it at the beginning. It exists. It's not like
Will's drinking.
It's illegal.
It's in the picture that we use on the Q&A.
Just because many things that make sense don't exist. Or development costs. So
I blame some of it on development.
Yeah, that's why we will hopefully be seeing dogs in Black Frost. because you can.
There is one picture that I remember.
I can't find the site it was on anymore. Like that site changed the picture.
I have the picture if you want.
I have
I
it
can
too.
send it to you.
I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a cropped version of it. I don't have like the actual image, so. But you can see different dog breeds in that. But it's not an actual screenshot from the game. It's concept art.
It's concept art.
So if they removed it from everywhere, maybe we won't be getting dogs. Maybe not right away. Because concept art doesn't mean it's in the game. It might make its way eventually. I'm trying to think of concept art.
It'll depend. It'll depend too on what they can write into the game engine, and you know this because of what you've been doing.
Oh yeah.
You know, some things are easy, some things are not so easy. Some things. I mean,
it's the same engine that Fortnite is in, and Fortnite does everything, and it does it mostly well. And I believe they're getting help from Epic, so the possibilities are there for anything and everything. They just need the money, time, and the people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be one. If they do early access, it's going to be one of those things where we're probably going to get it in little steps, and they'll add stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get a sliver of Black Frost to start.
Yeah.
So with that, unless there are any more questions, Coy, I'm so sorry you got here, but you got here just a little at the end of the story here.
Yeah,
you can watch
for stopping in. But the video will be available to everybody afterwards, and because we put the chat on screen, you don't miss anything that's going on until YouTube gets their act together and gets it processed and everything. So
the first comment on the chat, like on the screen, is me saying I was being held at gunpoint by a wolf or by a bear. That's the first one that comes up. So have fun with that. Everyone, please leave a like. It's very important for the podcast so it can grow.
Yeah, likes, comments, and subscribe. Please. We want to continue doing this. So
and hit the notification bell if you want notifications.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I don't have anything else, Toasty. I'll let you say whatever else, and Jetwire can carry us out.
Yeah.
No, just if you ever want to, watch some lore videos, go for it. They're on my channel. I'm currently working on getting more of those out now that I'm no longer sick. But that's it. I guess we'll do a future episode all about the Tales trilogy, and then anything from Wintermute that might be related to the Tales, including the side quests from episode 4 that I was talking about earlier.
Bunches to talk about.
Yeah, that's all for me, I guess.
It'll be great. Looking forward to it. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.